allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, start with roll call.
Mayor Sherman.
Here.
Councilor Burrell. Here. Councilor Klinkhammer.
Here.
Councilor Lindstrom.
Here.
Councilor Spradlin. Councilor Tyree.
Sorry. Okay, this is our first meeting since we lost Chad and Missy. And so I just want to acknowledge and maybe take a minute to just reflect and remember them and gather. so. Okay, item 3, approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any additions or corrections? I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
I move we approve this agenda of our meeting on July 10th, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Councilor Burrell.
Yes.
Councilor Klinkhammer.
Yes.
Councilor Tyree. Councilor Lindstrom.
Yep.
Mayor
Yes.
Sherman.
Yes. All right. Motion passes. Approval of our minutes. We've all had a chance to look through the minutes from our last meeting. Does anybody have any corrections or revisions? No, I'd look for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting of June 12th, 2023.
A second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Councilor Lindstrom.
Yes.
Councilor Klinkhammer.
Yes.
Councilor Burrell.
Yes.
Mayor Sherman.
Yes. Motion passes. All right, visitors and delegation. Do we have anybody from Kids at Their Best for a presentation? I don't see them here. All right, so we've got, is it Vero? Broadband presentation.
Yeah, I'll just introduce him real quick.
Okay.
Tyler Purvis, Community Development Director. So Vero, not Viero, Vero Broadband reached out a couple months ago with interest in potentially bringing a fiber network here into Brush. And so Evan came to the office 5 weeks ago or so, and he and I met face to face and talked about what that might look like. And then we had a follow-up call. At that time, we agreed it would be a good idea for them to come talk to council about who they are, what their thoughts are on the possibility of coming out to Brush. And then last week, he and I and Matthew, the gentleman with him, we talked it through a little bit more what the presentation would look like. And so at that, I will go ahead and turn it over to them. All right. Well, thank you all for having us. Thanks for the introduction. So we are here to talk to you about our company, Vero Networks. We are a fiber to the home provider. I'll start with a little bit of history and background on us. The company was started in 2017 by some legacy telecom folks that helped start the company Zayo, which has become a global telecom company. And they left Zayo and wanted to start a company that was focused on building fiber for school districts. And that's really where we got our roots, was building fiber for school districts. The focus really has grown from school districts to entire communities. And Matt, let's go to the next slide here, a little bit more of a timeline view. From 2017 until now, we expanded, building from school districts to cellular carriers, as well as some data center hyperscale business. And then after COVID, we realized that we wanted to be deeper into the communities that we serve, and we launched in 2021 a fiber to the home division. And that's really what we're here to talk to you all about is fiber to the home. And in that time period over the last couple of years, we've made some strategic acquisitions of some fiber to the home networks here throughout Colorado. And that's what's shown on the map are the areas and the markets that we currently service today. And as we kind of fulfill that portfolio and the areas that we serve, we're looking at coming out here a little bit further east. And one of the driving factors here in Brush is that we've been working with Scott over at the school district to connect the schools here in town. So that's been underway as part of that initial focus of our business, but now also in communities where we do that, we use that as kind of a foundation for launching a fiber to the home to serve the entire community solution. We'll move down here, just some background. And forgive me, I probably should have asked timelines here. Do you guys want me to keep this like really condensed, or how do we want to handle time here for this presentation?
What are our options? Like 10 minutes to an hour? Or?
10 minutes would be fine. I can,
Cool.
I can try to keep it in 10 minutes. I could talk for an hour, but so, this is a pretty basic slide. Why fiber? Fiber really is the future. Speed, reliability, longevity, and value are really the fundamentals of what fiber brings to a community. We are deploying all of our fiber networks with the latest technologies so that they are going to be very long-lasting. Fiber is really an infrastructure investment in the community, because once we put that fiber up and it's here, we can continue to change electronics and provide additional speeds and services over that fiber for 50 plus years, is the typical lifespan of a fiber network. So, those are really the key components of why we do a fiber network in town. Vero's focus is maybe a little different than some other providers. We really kind of focus on becoming part of the communities that we serve, and that's really part of the reason that we're here today. Is we want to get a sense from the community on really how do we fit in, what is the community involvement in this. We say becoming the fiber of the community is kind of a corny tagline, but it's pretty true. And it's really based on providing the best in class quality of service, local responsive customer service, and straightforward and fair pricing. This slide, we have a couple quotes from some of the markets that we're in here in Colorado. We have had a long-standing network in Woodland Park, Colorado, and we just launched Leadville, Colorado. So just a couple similar smaller towns that we currently service. When we launch services in a community, we try to keep it very simple, kind of like a 3-tiered pricing model. 100 meg, 500 meg, and a gig would be a typical offering for us. Pricing for these services is going to range, call it from like the $60 range. So I think that we're very competitive with other offerings, similar speeds and services. We also have a phone solution. So if you get our internet service, we can replace your telephone or your landline. It's just part of that as well. And one of the other key components is that we include the equipment, the modem and the wireless router is part of the service offering. And that's important because we do feel that the managed Wi-Fi, as we call it, is really part of what our solution is. We don't want to just stop at bringing the fiber to the home. We actually provide the service within the home through our managed Wi-Fi solution. And that's a pretty neat deal because it allows us to help manage that device. So if someone needs assistance, we can remotely manage it and see if there's signal issues throughout the home. We can help configure it. We can do things of that nature. Or you as the homeowner or the person with our service can do all that from your smartphone. We have an app that you can use to control that router. You can set controls on it and things of that nature. So really it's a home solution that goes beyond just connecting the actual building. So I'm going to pause there. I like this to be a little bit more of an interaction discussion, and it's kind of who we are, the services that we intend to bring to town, and then we'll dive into kind of the process as maybe part 2 of this. Does that sound good to everybody?
Great.
Any questions so far? You guys excited to have fiber service in town? I guess would be
It'd be very nice.
the one thing, right? Okay. Well, as far as what it takes to do this, really there are 3 different phases that we go through as a company to bring fiber services to town. And that would be engineering and permitting, construction, and then, the installation phases. And, we put some rough timelines on here. We try to manage those. With a community of this size, there probably wouldn't be a ton of overlap, but we don't have to engineer the entire town in certain areas. Maybe we'll do zone by zone. And once we have a zone engineered, we can actually start permitting and construction on that while we're engineering the next zone. So it's a rolling process that we like to do that keeps things moving forward as quickly as possible. So the first thing, engineering and permitting, really the takeaway here is that we have 3 different phases. We do a high-level design. We've already done the high-level design for Brush, so we understand the costing, kind of the base layers of how would we construct this market, things of that nature. And it's everything that we've seen so far is really good, and we're excited to move forward. And then very quickly we'll move into that low-level design, which is really that boots on the ground engineering. We understand which side of the street we'd be installing on. The build here will be a mix of aerial and underground. So we use both methods of construction. So we figure out where we're going aerial, where we're going underground during that low-level design. And then permitting, and this is really where, as we talk about a little bit later, we want to work with you all to make sure that permitting isn't a hindrance to the process, and that we also at the same time adhere to whatever requirements you all have for use of rights of way and things of that nature. I said it earlier, we over-engineer all of our deployments so that we have excess capacity for things that none of us can foresee today. And then we also do like to get out into the community and let them know that we're coming. So we'll look at holding a town hall type event, answer questions. We do go around and put door hangers on folks' homes to let them know that we'll be doing construction in their neighborhood and that sort of thing as well. So communication is a key component. When we get to construction, one of the unique things is that we actually have our own construction entity called Glassroots Construction. So that makes it very much that we're involved in the process from start to finish. We don't just turn it over to a bunch of subcontractors. They come in, make a huge mess of town, have zero accountability. We're managing that process through the entire construction phase as well. So our construction team is equally motivated to do a great job during that construction phase, because we know that will impact the future success of the deployment. Disruptions is one of the things that we really try to key in on. Anywhere that we disrupt land, we restore it to same or better type conditions. And yeah, we really just train our crews to respect the areas that they're occupying when they're doing construction. And then finally, during the installation phase, this is really probably the most important interaction that we have with our customers, is when we perform the installation at their home. So we focus very heavily on this. It's going to sound horrible, but we really kind of want this to be our primary interaction with our customers. If they're calling us after installation, usually that indicates an issue or a problem. So we try to head that off during that installation. We spend the extra time to go through the home, connect whatever devices they have to the Wi-Fi, make sure that the Wi-Fi coverage is good through the home. Really just take the extra time up front to make sure that customers are set. And we have this, we strive for 5 initiative, where we're always looking for 5-star reviews, and that's very, very important to us to make sure that we get the customer feedback and that we are performing at that 5-star level. And then finally, we do have some community support programs. The first one is the Affordable Connectivity Program for income qualified families. They can receive a $30 credit for their internet services through this program that's administered by the FCC. So that helps really create a more affordable solution for folks that need that assistance. And then that one's funded by the federal government, but then we also offer a program called Vero's Heroes, where we support and offer discounts to EMTs, firefighters, nurses, teachers, military, first responders, folks like that we feel are community heroes. So that's a program that we also have that helps support communities. All right, so really, why are we here? And this goes to a, I don't know, there's a slide deck break.
No, that pop-up showed up. You can click on skip there. McAfee is saying that we need it.
Go for the X. When in doubt.
This slide there. Here we go. You gotta click on got it first.
Yeah, you gotta do got it first.
Okay. I'm clearly a Mac guy, so.
All right, so as I mentioned, it's very important to us to establish partnerships with municipalities that we service. And really, what does that look like? And I've got some examples here. This isn't, set in stone. This is how it always works. Every community is a little bit different. But, we want to bring to the table, this is a private investment. We're not seeking handouts here to subsidize this effort. But, the fact that we're investing in this community, we want it to be a community that supports us, in some other ways. So really, what we want to bring is, competitive fiber internet options to the community. We'll do that as a, conscientious partner. We'll build this in a way that is as least disruptive as possible. We feel that is going to result in a utility that improves the community in a number of different ways: economics, just overall connectivity. We all rely on connectivity these days for so many things: telemedicine, education, you name it. It's just all there. We're a reliable company with local customer-focused support. We will have some technicians serving this area that would help support the local economy. And then finally, as we build out this infrastructure, there's likely to be some municipal benefits as well. If there are facilities here that the city needs connected, we'll have the ability to connect those facilities in a very easy way, create a wide area network for the city, like we're doing with the school district. Maybe utilities, who knows what can do that, what we can use that for down the road. So what we're seeking is really just a general support for our efforts here. We get into the permitting. It's always very helpful for us to go into that with a very clear, defined process up front. And if we can work with the city to create a structure that allows us to build at a very efficient manner, that really is something that we want to do. It's very difficult for us to go into communities where you have, you can only build one block at a time, for example, and a permit's issued for a single block, and you can't go to the next block until something happens. We want to create a relationship and build trust with you all, that we are respecting the rights of way and we're doing things the right way, but at the same time have some sort of process in place. We've seen blanket permits be one example of that we can work with you to do that. Collaboration on future projects, right? So if you are doing a storm sewer replacement and the ground is opened up, that's a great opportunity for us to come in and put in our conduit and put fiber in at a reduced cost. So coordination on projects like that, I think, is a very helpful thing for us as well. And then finally, potential use of public facilities. Where we need to place a piece of equipment somewhere, can we work with you all to lease a space in a facility or an easement on a parcel of land or something like that? Again, I don't have specific asks today for that, but just that overall cooperation with us is really what we're hopefully looking for here moving forward. So, next steps, really, I think, what we need to do is just obtain the specific requirements for the use of the rights of way from you all. We'd love to start working with your teams, Public Works, Economic Development, Planning, to make sure that what we're doing aligns with other projects. And you all know this community way better than we do, so we want your input on some of that. Look at the permitting templates so that we know what to expect when it comes to that. And then we'll launch a City of Brush specific website that we will use to then communicate to the public. We can do updates. We'll likely have a map on there showing where we're building next, things of that nature. And then we intend to hold some of those town hall meetings, letting the public know what's coming. So, was that 10 minutes?
Pretty close?
Pretty
Yep.
close?
Can I ask some questions?
Yes.
So are you tying into an existing fiber network?
So backhaul is how we would get from Brush to Denver, which is really where we connect to the rest of the internet. And we would be using existing fiber here in Brush to connect to Denver.
Okay. And then when you are specifying between directional bore and aerial, are you going to just be cognizant of like where you're at and whether that area has aerial already? Is that kind of your plan?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so if there's existing overhead and, the aerial utilities are how power and, telephone and cable are served today, we'll likely just leverage that same infrastructure. We'll work with the power company to utilize their poles, obviously, for that. And sometimes we do run into issues where poles aren't tall enough, or they're old, or there's some issue with that. And we have a couple of choices to make at that point. We can either work with them to replace the pole, or do what's called make ready, so they can hold our attachment on there. Sometimes it's easier for us to say, well, this section, instead of going through those steps, we'll just go underground and serve those homes via underground.
And I know that you said you've done the high level planning. Have you taken into consideration people that live like on the very skirts of town?
Yeah, so the way that we view a lot of this is, today with our own investment, the economic support get town, right? The areas outside of town, we'd love to work with you, the county, whomever, to go after a lot of the grant funding that's available, where the economics don't support just a straight build and investment. And if we can leverage grant dollars, we can certainly expand, the number of folks that we serve outside of just the, call it city limits.
Don't mistake my questions for me not being excited for fiber. I am. I do have another question. It's going to feel a little targeted.
Sure.
But that's my job, is to take care of citizens, right?
Absolutely.
Fiber companies are known for having peak pays for peak use, or also for having times where we have a lower bandwidth, if you will. So is that something that our citizens should expect ahead of time?
Absolutely not. So we don't do data caps. That's something that other providers or cellular carriers have done for years. That's not something we do. I may have glossed over it, but really the straightforward pricing, we're not in the game of, hey, here's your low introductory rate, and over time, creep it up and you have to call to get the introductory rate again. That costs us money to manage that. We'd rather just offer a service at a rate and just have a happy customer. So we take a different approach. We kind of look at it as anti-cable. So a lot of the tactics that the cable companies use, we're like, let's just do the opposite of that, because I think it's very easy to hate the cable company and nobody's really happy with that service. So we really do try to keep it very simple for folks.
I have seen another fiber company where they built extensions into, say, one street and then told customers 2 streets over that they couldn't have anything. I really don't want to see that. I hope that's not the plan.
That's not the plan, that's not the intention. One of those steps that we'd love to do is sit down with the planning teams and share those designs. And if we're missing the boat on something, like, we could go 1 street over and have 20 other customers that we didn't have in our plans. Let's incorporate that into the design. So it's not set in stone that we cut off at a certain point or something like that. Obviously it has to make sense for us. And even if it doesn't make sense, we can get very creative on ways to help make it make sense. So grants are one way. We've also looked at projects where there's a community that's larger lots, that's maybe a little bit outside of the core, We've done some programs where, you know, if it's an HOA or something along those lines, we can get X number of folks to pre-sign up, then we know that we're gonna get, you know, the level of service, you know, take rate, we call it in our industry, in that neighborhood to then justify building it out if it was on the bubble from a cost effectiveness.
And did I understand you correctly that you're planning to have an office in Brush?
I don't know that we would do an office. I think
You would just have technicians that are local?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we're, again, with the anti-cable thing, I don't know, do people go to cable company offices anymore? I don't, we're a very remote company, we cover the state, it's how we operate, it's a kind of a,
I think most companies are that way. I know that there are a couple guys that work for Spectrum that live in the city, but
Yeah.
there's no Spectrum office here.
exactly. So I would anticipate a similar situation.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yeah, no, those were good questions.
So do you plan on hiring local technicians or having technicians from Denver come out to service the area?
You know, I think there's a little bit of nuance in that. Maybe you can speak to some of the plans on that. But you know, we are trying to get enough of a critical mass in the area. And the more that we can get in the general area, the more we can focus techs
Justify, yeah.
out here.
That
right?
makes sense.
Yep, that's right. I mean, it's for us, coming from Denver is just a distance question, and typically 2 hours is too long to do service calls. So to Evan's point, I think we hit critical mass. We get 3 or 4 folks out here pretty easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you live in the boonies, it's not that far from Denver unless you're talking to somebody from Denver.
You might do that driving your sleep, right?
Is there a special rate for, you have 2 great programs here at the Barrows Harrows and everything, for seniors? Because we have a lot of seniors here on fixed incomes.
Okay.
So is there, I know you have the affordable connectivity program. Is that pretty easy for them to access? Is it pretty,
The
or is it a limited amount?
ACP is easy. You know, there's a website, they have to put in their information, they get a confirmation number, we take that confirmation number and it just goes through the system. So, you know, I think that, you know, we can assist with that process if someone has a challenge with it. And someone from our customer success team could certainly help walk somebody through that.
Cool. You might have already asked this question. I was reading back to see and I missed some of it. So when you put all of it in, do you activate certain parts of town first, or is it just click on one switch and everybody has it one day?
So, it'll be, we call them zones.
Mhm.
So we'll do zones here. We can do, the number is 432 per zone,
Right.
right? So, you know, there might be 4 or 5 zones here in town that we would light up at, you know, kind of on
Gotcha.
an ongoing basis.
I don't know how familiar you are with Rush, but if you do that, Ward 3 is the best ward here.
So
Just letting you know, these guys will argue, but
we get competitiveness between the different wards or zones or whatever. And to be quite honest, that would be something that would be very helpful for us that we don't have is if you all could share with us kind of the boundaries of the different wards that you have, then we could maybe try to align the zones with the wards just so that we're doing things very similar to how you view the town being already kind of split up into different areas.
cool.
Can I
Right.
ask a question, piggybacking off of Larry's question about your 432? Is there a reason you wouldn't run an 864? Like, do you feel that we're not gonna grow substantially, or do you feel like the 432 can handle growth? Because we are growing, we're gonna have a housing development coming in with more than 200 homes, like,
Awesome.
I'm just wondering if the 432 is gonna sustain that.
I think just the nuance there is that's the size of the cabinet, so it can only handle that many homes.
I know what it
So
is.
we oversize the community to that, so we'll only assign that to 70% of the homes. We'll take as many cabinets as it needs to fill out the community. So if we need 10 of them, and we can always put more in on fiber backbones and kind of things like that, so.
I just wanna make sure that we're having room for growth and we're not gonna be like sitting here and have new customers and new households that can't
Right.
get fiber when they're so excited about it.
Yeah, so fiber counts are, I think fiber count is different than the subs per cabinet area.
Okay.
So, the way that we design our networks is that we are deploying the XGS-PON, which is a 10 gigabit today capable platform. And we limit there's a split ratio, and we're at the very bottom end of that split ratio to make sure that we don't run into the bottlenecks. You know, at 9 o'clock at night, everybody's at home watching Netflix or whatever, and the whole system slows down to a crawl.
Again, don't
That's
mistake
not
my
good for us.
questions for me not thinking I'm excited. I understand it, and I want to just make sure that we're doing the best that we can to make sure we're going to have a good fiber.
Oh, I'm happy to get into the details.
We won't keep the council for that, but you and I can talk
Yes.
about it later.
But to the extent that there are new housing developments and we need to change our sizing ratio on one cabinet area to be thoughtful about the future, that's something we can do now. It's probably not something we can do in 5 years once it's up and operational. So again, additional details to help us plan will end up being way better.
Yeah, and I think that falls under, you know, really these next steps of engaging with you all down at the, you know, department head level or whatever, to understand that, you know, hey, there's a whole new subdivision going in over here. Great, let's incorporate that into the design now so that we are ready for it.
Yeah.
That's where our staff can,
Yeah.
this is you and the staff from here on out.
Yeah,
Thank you
exactly.
for coming and presenting all of this to us. It's going to be exciting. People have been asking for fiber for years.
Yeah, it's the wave, right? It's happening all over the state, and you know, we're focused on smaller communities. You know, that's really where we, you know, where we like to play in that sandbox. We're not going after overbuilding downtown Denver or Greeley or, you know, anything like that. So it's, I think Rush is great, and especially with the school district, we'll already be here connecting the schools, so it's a pretty exciting,
Yeah.
you know, potential for us to grow off of that.
Sounds
So
perfect.
It is.
Well, thank you for your
Thank you very
much.
presentation,
All right,
and we're
thank you.
looking forward to
Yeah.
seeing what happens next.
Yeah, appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, next we have citizen comments. Citizens are invited to speak to council on any item that does not have a public hearing scheduled. There's a 5-minute time limit per person, unless otherwise noted by the mayor, and please use your time wisely as you only get one opportunity. This is the only chance in the meeting to address council unless otherwise invited. Please note that no formal action can be taken on an item that is not posted on the agenda due to the open meetings law provision. However, they may be placed on a future posted agenda if action is required. To better assist you with questions, please submit them in writing to the city clerk and someone from staff can respond. So do we have anybody here for citizen comments?
I'm trying to think of really simple.
So can you just tell us your name and where you're from?
Very much, Dana. My name is Bradley Dempsey. We're an agricultural community. We always have been an agricultural community. We're changing. A lot of things in Colorado are changing. That's kind of all that's to it. Right now, we're at 30% basically height because of Biden right now in office. There's a lot of things overseas, if we want to look at things overseas as far as things going on with Ukraine and other things, even in the United Kingdom as far as future leadership of this world goes, which can affect a lot of things. I personally don't feel that it's a good idea for a black investment to come in. Without enough issues maybe within the city, we've had a hell of a winter, a hell of a spring. I've just kind of gotten to know a few people in town, and even some of the city workers are not really working with each other. That's not really that good. That's opposition. You know, people not wanting to go to work maybe at times because of this, or drinking, or this and this. Brush has a lot of issues too. With drinking and drugs, I know a lot of people in the community, once getting business owners, have had to personally deal with theft. Not only myself. Police force is doing great. Next level, are we geared up for that? I don't know. I really don't know. Something just kind of think about. I mean, the tax is already high enough as is. It's just high. I mean, there's spots to be filled too. I mean, so what if it just remains where it's at? I mean, there's other things too, like the middle school is all taken down. That could be a huge development. I mean, anytime you come in with road stuff, yeah, you do grade and everything like that, but you still tear shit up. And there's still underground fibers and things that are located. Fuck, It got missed. Well, this costs money for this company. Things didn't look at. You know, that's a huge, major cost. It can just take a company or not. You know, even at the grocery store this winter when winters are hard, the door there don't work. You know, they've probably had to deal with people not paying a bill. You know, it's, okay, I'll use Fort Morgan. Fort Morgan, very similar. They did all this development over by the sheriff's office. Affordable housing, $1,200 is not affordable. That's pretty dang hard to make it. That is just really, just a challenge. Costs are just going up for building. That's that. I mean, we don't know how much more things are gonna skyrocket it, or whether they're gonna stay. I mean, yeah, it seems like we may have more supplies, who knows? You know, I-76 is busy. I mean, that interstate is just busy. I work that thing almost every day. It's just that way. I mean, things are getting busier. But that's just, I mean, there's some other good points, you know, if they do this. There's growth, and there's nothing wrong with growth. And people coming in, but can we handle that? Do we have water? Do we have electrical? You know, Kersey's had to look at that too when they've done some development too and things like that. I mean, that gas station in Kersey is just swamped. I mean, all the dang time. You know, they handle it, but I don't know how well. So that's all I gotta say. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank
Bradley,
you for your
said
comments.
30% of the, I didn't catch what you said, 30, what's 30%?
About 38% right now of inflation
Oh, okay.
on the radio. Thank you, Larry.
Okay, yeah, I didn't hear you, sorry.
That's okay. I don't talk that well. Never have, never will.
I don't hear very well, so.
That's
We're
understandable.
not a good couple, Larry.
There's some people in town, I mean, on that subject, there are some people in town with some health stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I appreciate what you say with the guy doing the presentation on the fiber. I mean, there's health issues. I mean, but that's what I've heard on the radio too. I mean, it's just, so that's my, thank you.
Thank you, Bradley.
Thank you for your comments. All right, next we're on to management. Tyler Purvis is here with the right-of-way presentation.
Yes, I am. All right, well, good evening once again, Madam Mayor, City Council. So tonight's agenda, get the light real quick. Right-of-way vacation request. So this is in follow-up to a discussion that we had on the 23rd of May with the Planning Commission regarding the same topic. So I'm going to give a lot of information here as a background for everyone who was there. It'll be a refresher for everyone who hasn't. It'll be primarily new information. It is a lot, and I know that you can kind of get bogged down with information, but if possible, try to pay attention. That way we don't have to come back and answer all the same questions when the discussion happens, because that's kind of what happened at the Planning Commission. But I get it, it's a lot of information to process. So the basic request is that the property owner is requesting the vacation of two right-of-ways, North Custer Street and North Cameron Street in the Brush Business Park subdivision, which I'll show a map here. So here's Highway 71 north of the interstate. The interstate's right about here. This is Industrial Park Road. So the property owner owns all of this here, and the request came in to vacate both of these right-of-ways. Within the application, or I'm sorry, within the staff report is a variety of different documents that the majority of which, if not all of them, we're going to touch base on some point. So the right-of-way, if you're not totally sure what that is, basically it's an entire dedicated tract or a strip of land that's meant to be used for public use, whether it's vehicles or utilities or something like that. And our land use code does speak about it. Section 16 verses 9 lays out what those details are. So if anyone wants to vacate the right-of-way, it has to meet one or more of criteria that I'll go over shortly, as well as make sure it aligns with the Colorado revised statute concerning this topic. And so you can't read all that, of course, but this is what our land use code has to say about right-of-way vacation. The criteria that it needs to meet is just one of them. It's either, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Yeah, compatibility overall. So out of the 4 things, this one meets 2 of them in my mind, but only has to meet 1 of them. So basically amending a plat for the purpose of minor lot boundary adjustments involving no more than 2 contiguous lots, parcels, or tracts, provided that no new non-conforming lots, parcels, or tracts are created with that. Potentially a second one as well, but that one's check, got it. We can move on with it being compatible with them requesting a vacation of a right-of-way. So with that, and then the CRS one, Colorado Revised Statutes, basically just means that these things are what we're talking about: block, owner, roadway, all of which is covered in this. So interesting enough about the land use code, how it's set up right now, these don't come up very often with the city of Brush. And with all the submittal requirements, we actually delayed some of those requirements because the question before Planning Commission and now City Council is simply, will the city support the vacation of this right-of-way, yes or no? If the answer is no, then there's no point in all the other legwork. If yes, then it makes sense to put in the extra money and time into doing all the initial submittal requirements. So the procedure in our land use code, it actually is designated as a administrative one, meaning that I can just say yes or no, but that didn't make a whole lot of sense, and I reached out to our attorney and said, I think this should go to Planning Commission and City Council. He said, I totally agree, I don't know why it says that in there. So no flipping decisions here on the staff level. We want to make sure this was thought through, and that way we're covered. I was going to say something else, but. All right, so a quick background on the history of this. So the properties there, they were annexed back in the, I think back in the 90s, but the initial subdivision, yeah, 1997. This is the initial annexation and subdivision, so it was just 2 lots at that time. Not a whole lot happened. About 7 years later, it was put into 3 different lots. And at the time, there was a discussion that tied into this plat being created on what things were going to look like out there. And so this is what the plan was. And so you can see this middle document here. This is what the rough layout was of what the owner at that time wanted to do. So it was meant to be an industrial and commercial lot. You can see the 2 main roadways running north and south there, as well as additional ones. And so, again, this whole plat was put together, kind of tied to that. There was language in here that had to do with building permits being issued alongside development as it happened. Essentially say that only so many building permits are going to be issued up until this amount of development actually happens with the road. And then the roads will not be brought on by the city until they're brought into city standards. And then the city will take them on for maintenance, which is pretty standard nowadays. Nothing different from what we do before. So in case you didn't know, none of this panned out there. There was an agreement that did come into play back then as well between the city and the developers. That agreement was never actually recorded either, and so it was never really passed on to subsequent buyers of the property either. And there was just some of the terms and so forth. And at that point, utilities were ran out there by the city before any development happened. Water and sewer was run north and south, both on Custer and Cameron Street. We'll talk more about that overall. In 2005, about a year later, this far west property had 1 subdivision, 1 additional lot was created, and I believe that was simply done because these folks just south of that were interested in utilizing that, and so they talked to the developer, so it went through a subdivision and they created that 1 additional lot. No public improvements were made, essentially just some boundaries were created for that property. Good so far? Okay. All right, so the current request now, the current owner acquired the property in April of 2022, and they've been in discussion with city staff prior to closing on the properties all the way up to date to determine uses and requirements. The discussions have circled around an RV park on block number 3 over here, and a self-storage facility on a portion of either block 2 or block 1. As the conversations for potential development have taken shape, the responses of the owner and the city have shifted in response to what kind of standards and requirements will be implemented based on the location, meaning where out there things will get done, history, the intended use, the planning and integration of future development, meaning if you do this, what does it look like for future development, and overall what the city code state about it. The initial discussion of an RV park was submitted as a planned unit development to the city because the city code did not have sufficient standards for an RV park. There was none, which helped the city develop standards for an RV park that were adopted earlier this year, if you remember. However, the property owner has decided that the RV development would need to take a back seat to the self-storage concept, as that would provide a lesser upfront cost and provide a cash flow that can in turn help fund the RV park. A sketch plan was submitted to the city staff for comments, and as the desired location for the development was on the south side of this property, block number 2, access to the property would only be granted through the public right-of-way, which would require the roadway to be constructed to city standards. A cost estimate was done by the city's engineering consultant in February of this year for a road constructed from the existing roadway at Industrial Park Road, so just north of Industrial Park Road, up to the entry point of their proposed plan, which is roughly 750 feet, and that estimated cost was roughly $300,000 for that roadway construction. Through discussion, the owner determined that the cost of that roadway and the improvements would prohibit the project from moving forward. So different alternative avenues were explored, including deferring road construction for 5 years and having a suitable temporary road, also implementing things at a trigger, at which point the road would need to be constructed, such as a future subdivision of the property, as well as implementing payback agreements with adjacent future property developments. I also talked about phasing the construction of the road, and a single requirement that was tied to each idea is the city's necessity to ensure the completion of the roadway if the developer was ultimately unable to perform the obligation, and our requirement as a city for financial security to satisfy that surety is a financial risk the property owner has been unwilling to take. In light of these discussions not yielding any progress, the request for a vacation of the platted public right-of-way as the only avenue that could potentially mutually be agreed upon was the catalyst to bring this request to Planning Commission and now City Council tonight. If it's not approved, the applicant has clearly stated that they cannot financially justify either of the projects and will put the properties on the market to sell. The vacation of a public right-of-way, what that means is essentially the city giving up a property right that we have deemed in the best interest of the public use. In this instance, as a requirement for approval of the replat in September of 2005 for future planning, property access and vehicular circulation, it made sense to put the public right-of-ways as a continuation of the roads to the south, North Custer and North Cameron. Basically, continue that straight shot going forward. A vacation of these right-of-ways would potentially severely limit the city's ability to implement access and circulation according to city standards for future development in between the properties. It is possible to gain these back or in a similar intended form through a future public process such as further subdivision, but it is not guaranteed. For these reasons, the city attorney has made clear through discussion of the situation that he does not recommend supporting the applicant's request, and a formal memo from the attorney is included in the report that each one of you do have. The properties that would be directly impacted by the vacation are currently served by public roads. So the County Road T directly to the north, as you can see, does serve all 3 of those properties. You got County Road 27.5 over here, and then there is access in theory from both of these ways. Anything off Highway 71 would have to get CDOT's approval as well. So all of them are served currently by roads. Due to the size of the properties, there is tremendous potential and opportunity for development. The parcels could be subdivided for many different uses, or used as 3 different parcels for 3 different uses, or combined for one large singular use. All possibilities would have a variety of access impacts and needs based on how they would be utilized. However, the properties are privately held, and the owner of the property ultimately gets to determine those outcomes. It is important to distinguish that conceptual ideas for unknowns can be very different in application from what actually happens. In other words, planning is important, but things may not unfold according to plan. Although a variety of plans for the property have taken place since 1997, as we all know, none have actually come to fruition. So now before the city is an opportunity for use of a portion of the land, but it does come with requests that the property owner has deemed the only feasible means of going forward with their project. The proposed project of a storage facility would be required to go through a special use permit where required conditions would be applied, if approved. Access would be a consideration for part of the conditions, and if there was no public right-of-way, the access would be required to be built to a minimum standard to ensure emergency services can get in and out of the site. Any future uses of the property could necessitate further conditions, including reestablishment of right-of-ways. So in conclusion, and then we'll dive into the discussion here, it simply needs to be determined if these existing right-of-ways are necessary or simply preferred. As with all development, cost is a primary factor for the feasibility of a project. The city seeks to be sensitive to that factor and flexible where it can be, while working to ensure that the adopted city code is upheld, that we are being relatively consistent, reasonable, and ultimately acting in the best interests of the community. The Planning Commission met on May 23rd to hear this presentation, discussed this request with city staff and the applicant, and voted to recommend to City Council the approval of the vacation of North Cameron Street to determine how the developer can move forward without the improvements on North Custer Street at this time, in light of the letter of opposition from the city attorney, as well as to remove language from the plat notice area regarding the issuance of occupancy permits in relation to the city acceptance of roadways. So at that time, based on the easements on the plat, it was presumed that there may not have been city utilities along North Cameron Street, which was the further east one. However, since that meeting, it was confirmed that there are city water and sewer lines located through the platted North Cameron Street right-of-way. However, there is no platted utility easement within that right-of-way. Furthermore, it would appear that the sewer line is not located within the easement along North Custer Street and even goes outside the right-of-way, and the water line appears to be outside that utility easement as well. So this is a survey map, terrible picture to put because it's so tiny, but on here it does show that those lines were identified, the sewer and water lines running north and south through there. So the easement on the plat is only over here for some reason for utilities, and no utility easement was ever put on here, but a roadway, or I'm sorry, right-of-way for the intention of roadway was put on both. And so one of the things that can be done going forward too is make sure the easement is in place for the utilities that do run north and south. That wouldn't really affect a whole lot of the development as it pertains to the lot of the layout anyway. So from the staff level, staff does not have a recommendation for approval or denial of this request for the vacation of right-of-way, so it looks to City Council for a decision. Basically 4 options for you: either denying the application, approving the request with no conditions, approving the request with conditions, or you can continue the request subject to additional information. That's pretty much everything. And here's one more picture of the maps that we have. So the sewer line running there, as you can see, it's not exact, but it's far outside the right-of-way. And then the sewer line there, and then the water lines. And this is the site plan that's in there as well for the storage area, proposed storage area. So, that's all I got. I'll answer your questions.
That's all you got?
That's all I got. I'll turn it over to the applicant for them to speak, and you can ask them additional questions as well. So
I
what do you
have
got?
a question. When we had discussed this previously at the planning meeting, I think at that time, and you believe you just said this, I just want to confirm it. At that time, we had the discussion, there were no utilities on Cameron, where the Cameron right-of-way is, and now we have confirmed since then that there are.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly right. Yeah, just to clarify, right there, it talks about the 20-foot easement that's over here for utilities. Nothing exists over here for whatever reason.
So there can be a utility easement without a road, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, and this
you
is
don't need a
not
road
too
for it to be
uncommon. Just down the street, a couple years ago, there was utility lines that ran through a property that were never actually, there's no easement, so they just ran them through there. And so we had to go back and fix the plat and put an easement in place. So it was aware for future folks, so they were clear that that's dedicated for that purpose.
Can I, do we know when those utilities were installed?
They were, as I understand it, Monty, you can maybe speak to it. So when this was proposed, it was roughly around this time. I think the Public Works Director.
2003-ish, somewhere around there. 2003 is what's ringing a bell. Somewhere around that, plus or minus a couple years.
Yeah.
So the statute of limitations for adverse possession is 18 years in Colorado. And if that is the accurate date, we likely already have what's called a prescriptive easement for those utilities. If it's okay, I'd like to just address you guys for a couple of minutes. Tyler said that our code gives him the authority to make this decision as an administrative. And everything he said is correct. He did call me. I said, do not do that. The reason I said do not do that is this is a real property right. And the only way that a municipality can dispose of an interest in real property is through ordinance. So even though our code says it, Tyler can't unilaterally pass an ordinance. That has to come to you guys. My memo is in your packet. It is in opposition. This should be taken with, I've talked to the applicants. They're realistic people. They have real concerns about if I put this much money into something that returns this much money, it's not good for me. Mine is, my opposition to this is simply from the case law that says you can't vacate without, if the property is or may be used for public goods or public use. You don't just get rid of a property without getting anything in return. And I think that this may be a situation where I think this project, putting the road in, is cost prohibitive. Almost flat out, I think both sides agree on that. I think that this may be a situation where a creative license or grant of using this as a private drive, as long as, you know, only the campground and only the storage is in play, and the future development would necessitate improving the road. And if it never gets there, then you're not out anything. But that way the town is not, or the city is not giving up a right that it otherwise has. So I think you can get to a win-win. I think you can do it economically. I understand why they would not want to put in this road, but I'm not sure that at this point, with, you know, parking a couple travel trailers and having a campground, why it would need a paved road with gutters and all that extra expense. So I'm sure they'll have more to say. I just wanted to let you know that this opposition is just based on the law, not the applicant. They seem reasonable to me. Thank you.
And there's access points all the way around it. It's not like they need that to get to it.
Yeah, one of the things or questions that came up last time was, well, can't they just, if they wanted to access it off of County Road T, go through the county and get permission there, which they could. I don't know if there would be any pushback from the county. They've already spoken with Nicole, Nicole Hay, who runs the planning and zoning over there, and her thoughts on it. Because it's platted, and obviously it was platted with the roads, with the intention that those roads would be utilized for that. Do they have to be utilized for that? And I guess that's been the sticking point all along, is because for the uses that they have, there's a special use permit process required. City council still has to approve that and put conditions on there. And so if, by looking at what's been platted already, you naturally think, well, there's a road supposed to go there. And you're making improvements adjacent to that road. And we want that road there for our future intent and benefit and our interest. So then you would have to improve that road. And that's what we've done historically. And so that's kind of the conundrum we're in now, is that to be consistent, relatively consistent, because every situation is a little bit different that we have. But if we require it for these folks, why would we not require it for these folks? And so trying to find a balance for this project, hopefully, so that the project can go forward, but the city's not being inconsistent as well.
Dan, what did you say we could grant them the access, or what was the term you used? The win-win?
I think rather than requiring these roads, so if you look at the spectrum of roads, there's a dirt path, right? And then there's your curb and gutters with storm drains and all that. I'm not sure exactly where our standards are. but I know our standards are enough that it would make this very, very difficult to justify financially. So rather than us getting rid of our right to put a road in there, we say, you can have an easement, a temporary access easement across our right-of-way to put in your dirt road or whatever works for your customers to get into your storage lot. And you don't need to improve that road unless and until, I mean, if you put a 500-unit apartment complex behind there, obviously we're going to say, all right, it's time to improve the road. If it's a storage yard that is used on the weekends by 10 people, you know, that's probably a lower traffic. It's probably something that you could have.
So it's called granting an easement within our
Temporary
right of
access
way,
easement.
or a temporary access easement, okay.
And, you know, you don't have to decide what the trigger is to say, okay, now there's enough development that we're required to put a road in. The other thing that I meant to point out, and I didn't realize this until you said it tonight, Tyler, is we do want some consistency about this developer comes in and they're gonna build houses and put in this road. This property is somewhat unique in that it's been vacant for 25 years. And, you know, maybe it does get developed and we do have to pave those roads, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just open field storage and nothing more than a dirt road is needed to get there. That means that the city doesn't maintain that road, that it's essentially their private road, that keeps their costs down. It lets them get their property open. And I'm not saying that's the answer, but it seems to me that in order to pass that ordinance, you have to show that the properties, or that the right-of-way is not being used or won't be used in the future for public good. And it looks to me like there's a potential that that road would need to connect at some point. So I'd be hesitant to get rid of a right that you currently have.
Well, the Cameron Street one is not really a road right now, right? It was just kind of put in there in that initial planning of that project that never happened. It was added in the 90s. And then it's not a road that we use now to get across there.
Yeah, I don't know the full history on that. It's just a gravel road, if you guys don't know what the mayor's talking about. We don't really maintain it. Property owner, he runs his vehicles through there, clears out snow and different stuff.
And but does the public, I mean, do people use that access
occasionally? Yeah, I don't know how often. I imagine 1 or 2 a week maybe. But so that's there.
But-
There's absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, is Cameron Street. That's not even, it's just it was added to divide that property. It seems like vacating that one and just keeping it a utility easement shouldn't seem like too big of a deal because it's not being used as a right-of-way right now. Just a potential one for a project that never happened. Correct? Or no?
That's probably a matter of perspective overall. Because if this was the same way and there was nothing there, it would kind of still be the same thing. Because it's really like on paper what we're talking about.
Right.
Because that road in theory can be moved anywhere on the
But
property.
they're two different, I mean, Cameron was added later. Custer's been there the whole time and a couple people use it. Cameron runs right through the middle of a property that was subdivided, that is owned now by the same person.
Are you referring to like historically like this?
Yeah, before it was, yeah,
So this one you can see it's actually not lined up with that originally. It's a little bit further to the west.
yeah, but what about Cameron Street? It's non-existent.
Well, no street is, the right of way wasn't even put on that one. Right now
Oh,
it's just two
gotcha.
lots. So access was just on the
Just around the
perimeter at that
edges.
point.
I have a question. If we were to not grant the vacancy of the most easterly road, which one is that?
Cameron.
Cameron. Which is not on here. In this packet, it says Custer and Carson.
That's Cameron.
No, that's a mistake. It's Custer and Cameron. Sorry, Carson's not even there. My bad.
Okay, so it's Custer and Cameron?
Yeah, Cameron's the east one, Custer is the west one.
Okay, so by not granting the right-of-way vacation for North Cameron and just doing a temporary access easement, in one way that we're kind of hindering the developer that currently owns the property is they could potentially have a design plat that where they would want to build across that road that would no longer be a road. So we would be hindering their progress on that property, correct?
They would not be allowed to do that because a plat that's designated for public use.
The
And so
utility
we would have
easement
to change,
because-
approve the vacation of the right of way.
Whereas if we did approve it, they could build across that.
Correct.
Is that the, I mean, maybe that's an additional issue that it's been a while since I've looked at this, but is that, I know that the topography kind of says this improvement needs to be here, this improvement needs to be here. Is there an intention to build across the existing right-of-way?
Great question.
As of now, no, and I'll let the applicant speak to that.
I would never even think about doing it.
Okay.
I kind of want to leave it.
Can
just
we
like
hear
that.
from the applicants?
Okay.
The lots how they are.
Yeah, did you guys want to come up and share your
It's
thoughts?
whenever you'd want us to come up. I like the attorney's idea.
The furthest west property is for sale right now. The topography indicate, it kind of dictated in the middle one to do the storage units, and then, of course, on 71 doing the others, so.
But my preference, I would like to leave the roads. I mean, if we even vacate, I'll still build the road right where it's set.
You just don't want to
Because
have
it
to
makes
pay
more
We
sense.
just
$300,000.
didn't want to have to do the thousands and the hundreds of thousands of
I mean,
pavement.
we'll have more
Because
room.
it's RV and storage, it's not metropolitan, I mean, it's not like an in-town.
Yeah.
We'll have over $1 million just in the roads. And it
that's
won't
not-
cash flow, so that's why we'll just have to sell it. It doesn't make sense. And I would have never bought it if we was told up front that that was what was gonna happen.
So the vacation request is basically so that we can do what we want with the road. Considering it private in a sense, we would maintain it, but easements would obviously be accessible by
Well,
whoever needs them.
It makes sense, because the fire hydrants are out there. I'd like to build the road. It'll be all crushed asphalt. I hate dirt. So it'll be a nice road. In the other road, I do the same thing. It's dirt right now. I don't like driving down it because it gets my pickup dirty.
Rob, did you say you liked the idea of the
Yes.
temporary?
That's what I've been trying
Okay,
to.
so I like it too, just let you guys know.
But I don't want to be forced to put curbs, gutter, and pave it. Now, like the RV park, I don't like anything looking trashy. The entrances down on T, where you come into both dirt roads, I don't like how trucks would pivot and make holes and divots. That'll be all concrete at the ends. And then it'll transition to crushed asphalt. And then if we would take the barricades away, the dirt on,
Cameron, you can't.
where
even
you
get
could drive all
through.
the way through.
You can. if you
That way,
want to.
you know, the fire department, if they need to get down through there, easy access. Law enforcement too. To me, it just makes sense, and that's what I've been trying
Now it's just
for
buried out.
about a year,
Mhm.
just to do it that way. So when the attorney brought up that,
That's like,
I'm
That makes
thinking,
so much sense.
finally, that's what I'm after. I just don't want to be forced to have over $1 million worth of roads when stuff won't cash
and then a
flow.
letter of credit saying you finish it at some point, because that's like an open checkbook, you know, for you all to say, oh yeah, we're gonna take
Time to
that,
do
now we're
that.
gonna pave it. So,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's-
I mean, any of my properties, if you guys drive by, they're pristine. And when I do the RV park,
it'll be awesome.
I want to be top notch there. The buildings will look really cool. The interior, I don't like trashy stuff. The fencing all around will be like a nice post and down 3-rail fence, tree line all the way around and stuff.
We
Same
can
with the
access.
storage, it would be the same way. I want it to look nice.
So if we can get access, you know, like we said before, we're not a multi-million-dollar company
No.
that have come in. We're mom and pop, literally.
Well,
And so we
and
want to create 2 new businesses for the city of Brush.
with more housing coming in, means more storage needs.
Mhm.
And so that would be a plus. It might cash flow really good. Later on, I might ask, can we go ahead, and if I can afford it, I'll pave it. But right now, just to get it started is the crushed asphalt. I mean, that's what I got at our trucking shop and stuff, and holds up really good. I can maintain it, stays nice and smooth, and no dust. Yeah. So.
You've got too much hair for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good.
Thanks.
So I think the first
Tyler.
issue we need to address here is that it was not Tyler's packet that had the correct, our agenda is actually incorrect. Do we need to make a motion or change that in any way, shape, or form before we delve into that?
The
Or just
information that he
address it?
presented here tonight was updated.
Yeah. it was-
Oh, for North
I told
Person.
Miranda, and I was thinking, oh, for
Gotcha.
some reason that was my bad.
I just, because it's agenda, it's a public document that we put out for our meetings.
It'll be corrected in the minutes, probably.
So I'd like to come back to this large paragraph from Dan's memorandum on page 2. And it's going to be the second sentence, that there's a recommendation that the parties agree upon a firm trigger for the level of development that would necessitate the shift from a private road to a city road in advance, because that's the trigger, that's the part where we're gonna be spending they will be spending all of that money to develop the road. And I think if we settle on a firm trigger, then I think that would negate a lot of the concern.
If I could speak to that.
Yeah, got it. That's all I had to say.
Okay, and if I'm looking at this too narrowly, let me know, Council Dan, or you guys as well. So the solution that's being presented with Dan, as I see it, I think that's one that we've already talked about already, but what's hinging on everything is, to your point, is that at some point in the future, it still may be required of them to do that. And there's so many ways, we talked about this at the Planning Commission, so many different ways that this can get built out. It's almost like close your eyes and just imagine something. Because you could have each of these subdivided in different ways, 10 parcels combined into 2 parcels, whatever it may be. And so with that, it's going to have a host of different potential ways in which you would need development. So as an example, someone might want to access Road 27-5 and run a road all the way across there. And if that be the case, and this is one big parcel, that could be a loop, and this could never go through. This could also get built out a bunch of different ways and split down the middle. And so all these folks who are in the middle here, they're going to want to access their road, of course, or their property. So they're going to want to come down the road there. And so if the storage units are here, and then in 3 years, someone wants to develop this property, and they want access down there, would those requirements be 100% on them, or would there be an element tied to Rob and Wendy here to do that? And at which point they said, well, still a lot of money, we don't want to do it. And they said, well, we don't want to do it either, there's too much money. And so there's so many different scenarios you find yourself in. So if there's going to be a trigger, that still is going to potentially fall on Danielson's to have to cough up that money at some point, which
So-
they're trying to avoid. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Tyler, does the proposed idea of granting a temporary access easement nullify the need for a trigger at this time?
Well, it's temporary, so there's got to be some end to it, temporary until when. That would have to be in the language at some point, right?
Yeah, and that's one of those obnoxious lawyer things that temporary, we think, oh, it's just a short-term thing. When I say temporary, I mean, it's out there, but it can be revoked and I would assume a trigger would be something like high-rise apartment, hotel, neighborhood, something like that, something that would necessitate.
High trap.
Right. Now, I forget, these lots are like 60 acres apiece?
They're 27 to 29.
Okay. And the two on the right are the ones that you want to keep and develop?
Yes.
The one on the left's for sale. Tyler's hypothetical is absolutely worst case scenario, but it is something that should be considered, right?
I like the idea of the temporary something, but it's very, very frustrating watching new business trying to come into Brush, and I feel like we are very hindering every step of the way. And I just would like to see that, I know it's our code, but at the same time, I've seen people come and go and get frustrated and just go. And I think that I would like to see that stop, you know? I feel like we need to be a little, we don't need to be so flexible that we hurt ourselves 20 years in the future, but if there's a way to word it where they can do what they want to do, who knows what's going to happen with that third lot, you know? Nothing could ever happen with it, especially if we have all these stipulations with it, you know? But if there's a
And
way.
that's really the challenge there, because it often, we find out stuff that was put in place in Brush, where they just kind of kick the can down the road, and it comes to us, and we're like, well, do we kick it further, or do we do something here and now that's going to be in the
Yeah, I
best
don't think it
interest
should
of
be
everybody?
hinged on something that happened in '97 that never happened, you know? I think we need to deal with what we have in front of us right now, and we can plan for the future without being so hindering.
I think to that point, granting the temporary access easement with clear definition of what a trigger is provides them the opportunity to do what they need to do without the burden and the stress of having to build those roads at this time. But again, not to kick the can down the road, we need to define what that trigger is so that we are not kicking it down the road.
If there's a housing development that goes in there, that's understandable. If there's just another small business that goes in there that doesn't need, you know, a high access road, then, you know.
So I guess the best option is just to put this off till the next meeting till we get those definitions all down, right? If they like that idea, and we like
I
that
don't think
idea.
we need to put it off anymore. I mean, I feel like.
So what if we don't have
The
an
triggers.
actual definition of the triggers?
Yeah, that's what's gonna take a little work.
Yeah,
Well, we
because you can't do like
we-
a blanket statement because it needs to be well defined.
So what Tyler was saying earlier is very true. There's infinite possibilities of how to develop each one of these. And to try to say, you know, if I say, oh, well, you put an apartment complex on there, the road needs to come in, and they put 3 hotels on there, technically it's not an apartment complex, right? So I think there needs to be some wiggle room about intensity of development or something like that. And I think probably how much of the 2 eastern lots, the center and the east lot, ground-wise, are your developments going to
So
take
the
up most of
RV
it?
park will take up that whole lot.
Okay, and the storage lot will take up a third of that?
Third of it right now, but if it's
Okay.
deemed that it's
does well,
profitable, because I won't build unless stuff gets short. So
It's almost
who
like
knows
you're in
where
business
that
to make
could-
money.
that could- What's that?
I said it's almost like you're in business to make money.
Yes.
So if we know that the far east lot is going to pretty much be fully developed by your project, then there's not gonna be more development there, land area wise. In the middle one, if it's a third right now, realistically, this is my personal opinion without any legal ramification to it, even if you develop that whole thing into a storage area, it probably is not the trigger that would necessitate putting a road in. I think we could probably come up with some language that we could both agree on.
The trigger seems like it's gonna come from the sale of that third lot.
We'll just charge them enough that we can do whatever you want.
But that other lot is accessed from the other
From
county road
county
that's
road.
paved and
Mhm.
stuff too, so they could come in that way, where it wouldn't
Wouldn't-
bother, the other road. I just would like that other road to look a little nicer than what it looks like.
Okay.
So, are you wanting to try to define it later, or are we trying to want to finish this now?
I think we should
I
have more,
think we should, I think we should.
more
define it.
details. That way they know what's going on, we know what's going on,
Right.
everybody has a clear understanding
Everybody
of
agrees
what's
on it.
happening, yeah.
Well, that's fair.
Everybody's all happy camper.
Everybody's happy.
Put together some language.
So, yeah, if we can have Dan put together, because I think we kind of all understand what we want, it just needs to be defined in a
So question on that, Dan. So this easement, this temporary easement that's on the table right now, is that something that council needs to approve, or can that just be done at an administrative level?
Because it's granting the property right, I have council approve it. Are you guys trying to get out there and get digging today, or?
I mean, we wanted to start it.
We'll just do it right.
But it's truly been the roads that's the hang up. I mean, I had to start
Once that's
building.
done, we can.
Yeah, I mean, I'd recommend, and it won't take me, I've drafted these before, so it won't take me that long to draft it. But I would recommend we bring it back to council to grant that.
So would there be discussion between you, me, and the Danielsons on something that's everybody is happy with, and then we come back to the council at that point?
That's what I would recommend. That's fine with you guys.
Yep.
Cool.
That would be good.
Do they need to like formally deny the request for that right of way?
We can make a motion, you said,
Can we continue it, or?
to continue it.
Well, I guess that request is not.
That's what you said, Tyler.
Mm.
Those are your words, Tyler.
Because it's
Are you guys, I mean, it seems that we can get where we need to get without vacating that. Do you have any heartburn about
I'm
denying
fine
this
with that.
request, just so there's a record?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would recommend you guys make a motion to deny this request and direct staff to work with the Danielsons to come up with appropriate language as directed.
Anybody want to make that motion?
I move that we deny the vacation request of North Custer and North Cameron Streets for the north of Industrial Park Road, and that staff work with the Danielsons and move forward as directed.
Second.
Any more discussion? Roll call vote.
Counselor Gorell?
Yes.
Counselor Lindstrom?
Yes.
Counselor Klinkhammer?
Yes.
Mayor Sherman?
Yes. All right, that motion passes. All right, next we have a proclamation for Parks and Recreation Month, July. I can get it out. Do you have it to read? Okay. I'll just go ahead and read it. Okay. So proclamation number 2023-10, designation of July as Park and Recreation Month. Whereas Parks and Recreation are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the City of Brush, and whereas Parks and Recreation promote health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks, and whereas Parks and Recreation promote time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being, and alleviating illnesses such as depression, attention deficit disorders, and Alzheimer's. And whereas Parks and Recreation encourage physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas Parks and Recreation are a leading provider of healthy meals, nutrition services, and education. And whereas Park and Recreation programming and education activities such as out-of-school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education are critical to childhood development. And whereas Parks and Recreation increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas Parks and Recreation are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas Parks and Recreation are essential and adaptable infrastructure that makes our communities resilient in the face of natural disasters and climate change. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. Whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designed July as Parks and Recreation Month. And whereas the City of Brush recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now therefore be it resolved that the Brush City Council formally declares July as Parks and Recreation Month in the City of Brush, Colorado. Given under my hand and seal the City of Brush this 10th day of July, 2023.
Mouthful.
It was a mouthful. All right. Lance Schwint is our do you have anything to say?
You know, I'll just do this instead of the staff.
Okay.
Staff report.
Okay.
I guess with Parks and Recreation Month kicking off, this is also Parks and Recreation Week for the City of Brush. It started today, and we had a really good turnout at our 3-on-3 basketball tournament, wiffle ball tournament. We provided free golf for the community today at the golf course. And tonight we have a movie in the pool, which will start at about 9 o'clock tonight. So once we get out of here, we head over to the pool and bring the floaties and we'll watch the movie Milo and Stitch. Tomorrow we will have free swim day at the swimming pool from 1 to 5:15. Wednesday we have our community breakfast at the JC building from 6:30 to 8:30 a.m. And we'll have a cornhole tournament at the Pettis Park tennis courts at 6 o'clock. On Thursday, we have mud volleyball and horseshoes at Prairie Trails and VFW Park. And then we'll have the band Bittersweet that'll be playing in the gazebo from 6 to 8 p.m. Then on Friday, we will have another movie at Sunset Baseball Field, and that'll start at dusk. And Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we have a girls fast pitch tournament where we have about 18 teams that'll be coming into town to play girls fast pitch. And also Saturday, we have our 14th annual disc golf tournament over at Watrous Disc Golf Course. So a lot going on this week, including some baseball games there. Your son's pitching at right now.
Yes.
So,
Lots of baseball games,
but
too.
anyway, any question, people can call 842-5280, and everything provided this week is free of charge. So.
That's, thank you, Lance. So I would look for a motion to approve proclamation number 2023-10.
I move that we approve proclamation number 2023-10, designation of July as Parks and Recreation Month.
Second.
Any more discussion? Roll call vote.
Counselor Lundstrom?
Yes.
Counselor Klinkhammer?
Yes.
Counselor Garrell?
Yes.
Mayor Sherman?
Yes. All right, that motion passes. Next we have Monty Torres with the regional opioid allocation.
Okay, a little history on this is the opioid settlement funds that the city was supposed to get a little over a year ago. The city council opted to put this towards the regional group that formed to address opioid abuses and mental health issues associated with those. Councilman Tyree, he was appointed as our representative to go to those meetings, and he had been attending those meetings. This email that was in your packet is essentially asking, do we want to continue that same path, or do we want to take the funds? And I talked to Councilman Tyree, and he and I both agreed, let's let it ride and keep it going to that program. They're specializing in how to use the funds. If we got the funds, we couldn't do much with it because it was only a few $1,000s at the time. So we were recommending just let it go, and this is just saying that if we want to let it continue moving forward, we don't have to do anything. But if you want to get the funds, you would have to let them know. But our thoughts were, let's let it stay in that program and do some good there, because we wouldn't be able to utilize it as well.
Very good. So we need a motion to approve the funds being allocated to the
Regional opioid.
the regional opioid.
I move we approve the regional opioid allocations.
Second.
Any more discussion? Roll call vote.
Counselor Klinkhammer?
Yes.
Counselor Garrell?
Yes.
Counselor Lundstrom?
Yes.
Mayor Sherman?
Yes. That motion passes. Next we have finance.
I move we approve disbursements for payroll for June 13th, 2023 through June 26th, 2023, totaling $477,664.25. Also approve disbursements for payroll from June 27th, 2023 through July 10th, 2023, totaling $645,270.26.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Counselor Klinkhammer?
Yes.
Counselor Lundstrom?
Yes.
Counselor Garrell?
Yes.
Mayor Sherman?
Yes. All right, that motion passes. Staff reports. Tyler Purvis.
All right, just three things tonight, since I've taken up a lot of time already. First one, just an update on the Brush Cares program that council gave the thumbs up for at the end of last year, beginning of this year. As a quick reminder, that was us putting aside $100,000 to help partner with businesses on reinvesting into the business, whether new business expansion, that sort of thing. And so to date, so 6 months through the year, We've had 10 businesses apply for that, which has been exciting. 3 have been awarded for a total of $14,500 that we have dedicated to those. It's on a reimbursement basis, so we haven't paid out that $14,000 yet. But once they do those improvements and different things, we've been paying those businesses back and we'll be paying them back. The other 10 that have not received funding, they have not been not approved yet. They've just been needing to provide additional documentation as well. Some of them just getting bids from contractors, other ones just not providing the correct documentation on the onset. So in theory, all 10 of them could be funded as well as additional ones coming down the road. But that is under work. We've gotten a lot of good feedback, and those businesses that we have awarded, I'm sure, have been happy to receive checks from the city of Brush to offset some of the different expenses that they've been racking up. Any questions on that? Okay. Are we allowed to ask for questions on staff report? Or I just rattle away and sit down, and then if you guys have questions.
We usually just stop you and be like, wait, what?
Okay, I usually just keep going, and that's why I stop, because sometimes there are questions. Okay, the second one, just an update as well, halfway through the year, from our department, community development, when it comes to building permits. To date this year, we've had 147 permits issued, and we've brought in about $215,000 in fees for those permits. I looked over last year's to date. There's actually almost a 50% more at this date last year, 217 by the end of June. I was like, wow, it's a huge difference. And then I thought, it's raining a lot, so a lot of people aren't pulling permits for that kind of thing. But at the same time, granted, there was a big project that we approved for the North Point apartments there that are under construction, but again, this year to date, $215,000. Last year to date was only $51,000 at this point as well. So just interesting perspective on where things are. And then the last update, this past Friday, I did a presentation on City of Brush updates for the SAC lunch program that the museum does. It was well attended, about 35 people were there, packed out room over there at the museum, a lot of interest. And so I spoke primarily, just gave an overview of the city, our budget, and then dove into the development projects we have going on. Talked about Central School, everybody was really excited about that, a lot of questions on that one. Talked about the North Point apartments, spoke about Westwood subdivision, the 250 plus homes over there, giving them an update on where that was, the Brush Cares program that I just spoke about, and they just answered general questions that they had. So a lot of engagement, a lot of good feedback, so I was glad to do that. That's all I got.
Thank you, Tyler. Brandon Fuchsteiner, Chief of Police.
Good to see everybody. Feels like it's been a minute since we've been a minute. Just a couple of things beyond the day-to-day fun stuff we've been doing. We're currently in the process of rolling out our e-citation, which is our digital ticket program that we've been trying to implement for about a year now. Flip side of it, we have 2 officers that are still going through FTO, as well as a secondary CSO. Everything's going really well, so hopefully they'll be out in a few months. Our secondary, our cadets just started the academy today, so hopefully they'll be out by the end of December. But other than that, just day-to-day operations. Any questions?
How did the cop cars survive the hailstorm?
Luckily enough, for one time, we actually allow officers to take their cars home, so anybody that did live in Brush actually made out pretty well. Other than that, pretty much every unit that we had in town got beat pretty good. So we've been slowly replacing all the glass in them. Hail damage to the bodies is still a problem. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Tad Anderson, Fire Chief.
Good evening. Just a couple things. We did light out fireworks. It was a challenge, but it was successful and nobody got hurt. So that was what we were after. So.
And the rain squelched any fires that might have happened. Huh?
Yeah, we weren't worried about that. So, and we put in a new security system at the firehouse. I think there's 8 cameras around the facility. 2 or 3 are focused on the training center as well as the rest of the building. So that's been installed and up and working, and works great. So, and then a question for you guys to think about. Brush 921, the old fire engine, not the really old one that's out at the not dump, but the one behind the fire station. We are interested in potentially donating it to the school district for their little program that they have, with some caveats to that, because it's still a perfectly good engine. And so it would still be in town. If we had the need to use it, we would have the right to grab it and use it if we needed it. But that will help their program with a fire engine, and we're not getting any hits on anybody that potentially would purchase it. So
What program is that, Chief? I'm sorry, I don't know about it.
Paul Acosta has been working with middle schoolers for, I don't know,
This is
2
part
or
of
3
their
years.
Yeah, so they're getting like their CPR cards and all that.
And they come down to the fire station quite often, and they'll pull hose, and they work with some of the old SCBA's, and
So like an early cadet program.
yeah, yep. So it's just a thought.
Are they wanting it though?
Yeah.
The school district and the responsibility of maintaining it?
That's something I will follow up on and make sure that they understand that. But, I mean, it's a functioning fire engine right now, and so it would do them no good if the pump didn't work and they couldn't squirt water. And so for part of their program, it really needs to be maintained. We'll just have to get that agreement from them that they maintain it. So I just wanted to present that as an option for, other than it just sitting back there. So
At the CML conference, there's a few different vendors there that they take fire trucks and other municipal equipment and they just auction them off. My thought is, if the school district's going to maintain it to a level where if you ever needed it, you can go back and pick it up, that's great, a great program, but if they don't want to, then it might be better just to sell it.
Okay. I mean, we've thought about taking it to the auction, and it'll do okay. It's not gonna make any big money, but if it can help the kids and they do maintain it, I think it's a good idea too. So I just wanted to present that to you as an idea, so.
How did
That's
the
it.
brand new training center fare through the hailstorm?
Didn't even touch it.
That's what I
It's
wanted to
great.
hear.
I'm an old man, so I fell asleep early on 4th of July, but everybody on social media was really impressed with the fireworks and that you guys pulled it off. And
Oh, good.
it was very much appreciated in town.
Yeah, it was really good.
We got to a point where we were too late. We were committed. We couldn't stop. So
Point of no return.
we actually got a break. We got a reprieve from the rain just long enough to light them off.
Yeah.
We did have a little bit of problem with some of the matches not wanting to light, so it took a little time. I don't think anybody noticed, but
Yeah.
we did. But yeah.
Well, people are pretty happy with
We
it,
didn't
so.
do all the, we usually have cakes on one of the baseball fields, and we didn't set those out. They wouldn't have survived. And so other than that, I mean, it was a full show, so
Cool.
we were pretty happy we were able to get it off.
Yeah.
So,
So do you save those for next year? The ones you didn't light off?
yeah. Yep. So,
Very good.
Yep.
Thanks, Dad.
that's it. Thank you.
Lance, do you have anything more?
Nope, that was about it.
Okay. Lorinda Packard, City Clerk.
The only thing for me to report tonight is to declare the vacancy in Ward 2 that we're going to be discussing more in work session.
Dan Cobb, City Attorney.
You guys heard me speak enough tonight.
Monty Torres.
Few quick items. The main one, just be aware that we're going to start pushing harder on the street work. We're hoping to get some drier weather. They're going to be closing down Mill Street. I think it's tomorrow. That's to do some pretty heavy patchwork out there just to keep it together for the time being. And Dale's still looking at in the future trying to repave Mill Street from Hospital Road up to Glacier. So he still has that. It's going to be pricey because costs have went up quite a bit for asphalt, but also the companies all the federal funds that are out there now, people are building roads everywhere, replacing them, and because of that, the demand's so high, it's hard to get onto their list to get them locked in for work. But Dell said he's still working on that. Also, the water conservation program that we've started here this year. My understanding, Tyler, not a whole lot of interest yet in it, just a few people, toilet flappers, things like that. But the hope is to get a few different people on the pilot project that we've talked about. So that's to look at the whole entire house and yard as far as water usage. So hopefully get some takers on that, and that one takes off later this year. Other thing, the rodeo itself went great. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the work session. But thank you for everyone who volunteered, from Lions, Recreation, firefighters, Chamber of Commerce. Many people out there helped put that on, and it was the first professional rodeo that we've had, so that was really good to see that, and our numbers were very high. On the first 2 nights, 3 to 4 times higher than in previous years.
Awesome.
So that was really good. That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you, Monty. Mayor and council reports. Any councilors have anything to report?
CML, we don't go back from that. The one big thing I took away from it is sometimes you don't know how good you got it until you see how other people have it. I went to a lot of sessions that didn't do a lot for me, and I realized that they did a lot for me because we are given so much information. You guys do such a good job that some of these other city councilmen and the people from other cities were talking about problems they had in their city. And I felt like the kid from a good family for once, you know what I mean? Like, we have our problems, but you guys really do an awesome job, man. Because some of the things they were bringing up, I would just be like, wow. I mean, I told some lies about you because I wanted to fit in, of course, with everyone else. The other rotten too, but you guys do an amazing job, and it's not until you see, like I said, how other cities sometimes operate to know how good we have it here and what a great job you guys do. So thank you so much.
So about CML, I also attended, and I think one of my biggest takeaways from the sessions that I attended, I even attended a pre-conference session, was just, better leadership and how to be a better council person, and also how that relates to the public, how that relates to department heads. There was a lot covered. There's always a lot covered. We spend 2.5, 3 days in classes, so there's a lot covered. But also how to take care of ourselves, and the pre-conference session was about taking care of our city and our staff when we are in crisis. The timing was quite fortuitous. I have to commend our staff for all of you, for all the department heads that have managed through the loss of Chad and Missy so well. For Lorenda for stepping up and doing all the difficult tasks, and I really appreciate you guys holding it together under such a big loss. It was an honor to serve with Chad and to be here and to have Missy boss us around. So I really appreciate all that you guys do.
All right. I was going to make a statement similar to Larry's. I went to, there's a session called Mayor's Mingle. It was the second time I got to go to it. And I came out of there just feeling so fortunate to have the staff that we have and to have the counselors that I get to work with. And I think we're really lucky just listening to other mayors ask, how do you deal with this? I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that. So we're very fortunate.
You know what it is, that you guys are so proactive with things. You really are. A lot of these cities, their staff, because they get out their pants down, it seems like a lot, So I think that's where Rush succeeds. You guys really are. You're proactive. You see things coming, and
a lot of solutions that they threw out there are things that you guys already do.
So.
Yeah.
And also with the Chad Missy thing, it'd be nice. I don't know if we've ever lost a counselor that's been serving, but maybe we have a picture of Chad in here, you know,
Oh, yeah.
donning one of the walls. Maybe when we're redecorating with Loranda, we can have a little piece of Missy in here too.
Yeah.
She had a very unique look, very unique art. So.
Yeah. That would be nice. All right, anything else? I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So we do have a little work session, and then we'll be done.
We made it through till the end.